So, take a moment to enjoy that today. So, okay. But today, I know we also have communion. So, I actually do want to give two announcements. Okay, the first one is communion because of, I know there's different members of the congregation who are a bit concerned about germs and passing stuff around. So the church has taken steps to have these individually wrapped little communion cup and wafer sets. We may be using that today down there. So I'm letting you guys know right now. So if we end up using those little individual wrapper sets, please be respectful, right? Just because it's these little self-serve communion cups doesn't mean we get to play around with them. Don't do bottle flips in the communion cup before you open it. Don't mess around. I mean, I've seen people take pictures of them and be like, whoa, our church is trying this out. I mean, if you really need to post on social media hey, this is my communion cup, it's a bit different this week, whatever. But let's still try to be respectful. I know we're changing up communion a little bit with these self-serve cups, but let's still have the same respectful attitude when we approach communion, okay? Number one. Number two, if you are on the fence about being baptized, you were like, I really want to know what this whole baptism thing's about, or I think I'm ready to be baptized, or I don't know what the big deal is about being baptized, but I'm curious. If you're somewhere along that spectrum and haven't talked to me or Pastor Tim yet, please talk to one of us today. So you can kind of shoot me a message, Facebook message. You could, message me in, Brawl Stars if you have my friend thing. I think a couple of you do. And same thing with Pastor Tim. If you guys want to talk to Pastor Tim about it, then feel free to do that. We're going to be having baptisms the week after Good Friday. So it's the week after Easter on a Friday night. So that way we can all kind of come together as a youth group and enjoy that together and celebrate with those who are being baptized, right? So that's kind of it for announcements. So today's kind of a shorter message, but I think it's a really important one. If I was going to title this message, if I was going to turn this into a paper or a project or whatever, I might give it some kind of a title like, that's not what I wanted to hear. A lot of times we go through life and we'll get news or we'll have somebody say something to us and we'll just be like, oh, that's not what I wanted to hear, right? So we can hear bad news and we overreact to it. We're like, oh, that's really not what I wanted to hear. We can be told to do something we don't want to. I know growing up, a lot of times my parents would be like, hey, you need to do this. And I'd be like, that's really not what I wanted to hear. But you still have to go out and do it, right? Or maybe we hear how something went down. We hear a story secondhand. And we're just like, whoa, why did you do that and not this? I really don't like what I'm hearing here. That's not really what I wanted to hear. You should have solved this problem that way, not this way. And we think we know better. A lot of times when we hear something we don't like what we hear initially, our reaction can come out of pride. Maybe we think we'd be better if we were in control of those events. Maybe we think we'd do better if we could have the power to change what's happening. We don't like what we hear. And other times we'll have circumstances that really kind of put us in our place when we're not hearing what we want to hear. So we're going to be talking, I know we've been going through the whole Bible, just kind of a little piece by piece with Pastor Tim the last couple of months. And he's been doing highlights from the Old Testament. And this passage is 2 Kings chapter 5. It's a story of a guy named Naaman. Right? So, 2 Kings. By this point in the Bible, kind of just give you a little bit of a background. By this point in the Bible, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah had already split. That happened in AD 930, 931-ish. So it happened around then. And then we're about 100 years after that, give or take. We're in the time of Elisha the prophet. Not Elijah, Elisha. Okay. So Elijah was the older, and Elijah was the mentor. Elijah was the one that was taken up to heaven in the chariot of fire, right? And Elisha is the one who's left behind now, who is still a prophet to the northern kingdom, right? So that's where we are in history. And the interesting thing is we look at, okay, so Israel is in the north, Jews in the south. Okay, who's the big bad guys? Who are the power players? So the Babylonians kind of haven't hit the scene yet as the new empire. The empire that was the big bad guy before the Babylonians, who knows that?
Assyria.
Assyria, yes. So the Assyrian Empire were the big bad guys on the block. So you had Egypt in the south. You had all the ites to the east. You still had some Philistines and other different tribes out to the west that were seafaring that would kind of push in on Israel's territory. And in the north, before you got to the Assyrian Empire, there was a country called Aram. It's modern day Syria, but in ancient times it was called Aram. So it's not to be confused with Assyria, like the Assyrian Empire, but Aram was still a nation that had a pretty rocky history with Israel and Judah. A lot of times the two would be really warring with each other, right? So this is a surprising story from the start, and it's really a surprising story through and through. Now, let's just go ahead and just dive into the passage. We're going to take this in 4 different pieces. So let's go to the first 3 verses. Okay, it says in 2 Kings 5, verse 1 through 3. Now Naaman was a commander of the army of the king of Aram or Syria, depending on your version. He was a great man in the sight of his master and highly regarded because through him the Lord had given victory to Aram. He was a valiant soldier, but he had leprosy. Now, bands of raiders from Aram had gone out and taken captive a young girl from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my master would see the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." Okay, this is an odd story already. You have Naaman, who's a military commander in Syria or Aram, depends on your version, and they had captured an Israelite who was serving Naaman's wife that says, "Hey, you should go down to Israel and ask to go see their prophet," because that woman from Israel knew that the Lord could heal Naaman. And the Lord had allowed Naaman to win all these battles. Right, this is an interesting story already, right? So, in fact, in some of your translations, it'll call Naaman a mighty man of valor. And that's actually a title that was given to a lot of heroes in the Old Testament. So there's Gideon, Jephthah, David himself, Jeroboam, and another guy named Eliada. But some of these guys are heroes in the Bible, and they're considered mighty men of valor. And similarly, Naaman is seen as this war hero that fought with honor sometimes against Israel. And this is an odd story that Naaman would be really witnessed to by an Israelite prophet through his condition of leprosy, right? So that kind of sets the scene for this story, right? Now let's go to verses 4 through 8. This next part. Naaman went to his master and told him what the girl from Israel had said. "By all means go," the king of Aram replied. "I will send a letter to the king of Israel." So Naaman left, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. The letter that he took to the king of Israel read, "With this letter I am sending my servant Naaman to you so that you may cure him of his leprosy." As soon as the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his robes and said, "Am I God? Can I kill and bring back to life? Why does this fellow send someone to me to be cured of his leprosy? See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." When Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his robes, he sent him this message: "Why have you torn your robes? Have the man come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." Okay, so this is the first bit of I guess, bad news for the king of Israel. It's not really what he wanted to hear. He didn't really want to get that letter from the king of Aram, and he was shocked that the king of Aram would assume that the king of Israel had this power to heal Naaman. Now, the king in Syria, or Aram, probably didn't have the complete picture of really what the Jewish people believed. But in as far as his understanding went, is the king is the big boss of the kingdom. So here you go, from one king to another, heal my guy, because we heard there's some people down there that can do the healing. Get it done, like from one king to another. Can you do this for him? And the king of Israel thought that Aram, Syria, was trying to shame him. Really, was trying to put him in an awkward place. And the interesting thing about this is the king's initial reaction is, I didn't want to hear this. This isn't the news that I wanted from the north. What am I going to do with Naaman? And that just goes to show, in the north, they had bad king after bad king after bad king after bad king. And they didn't listen to their prophets. They didn't have a good relationship with their prophets. And you can see at this point, Elijah is like, okay, king, why are you getting upset? Why are you tearing your clothes? Why are you getting all worked up? Just send him to me. And he'll know that the Lord is the God of Israel. He'll know that there's a prophet here. Just send him to me. So a lot of times, that's that first time where, we might go, well, that's not really what I wanted to hear. The king didn't hear what he wanted to hear, and kind of overreacts a bit. Now, Elijah enters into the story at this point, and we'll see what happens next with verse 9. So this we're going to read 9 to 18. This is the longest, or one of the longer passages we'll be reading today. So, what happens next? So Naaman went with his horses and chariots and stopped at the door of Elisha's house. Elijah sent a messenger to say to him, "Go, wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." But Naaman went away angry and said, "I thought that he would surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, wave his hand over the spot, and cure me of my leprosy. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be cleansed?" So he turned and went off in a rage. Naaman's servants went to him and said, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you have not done it? How much more then when he tells you, wash and be cleansed?" So he went down and dipped himself in the Jordan seven times as the man of God had told him, and his flesh was restored and became clean like that of a young boy. Then Naaman and all of his attendants went back to the man of God. He stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. So please accept a gift from your servant." The prophet answered, "As surely as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will not accept a thing." And even though Naaman urged him, he refused. "If you will not," said Naaman, "please let me, your servant, be given as much earth as a pair of mules can carry, for your servant will never again make burnt offerings and sacrifices to any other god but the Lord. But may the Lord forgive your servant for this one thing. When my master enters the temple of Rimmon to bow down, and as he is leaning on my arm, and I have to bow there also, when I bow down in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord forgive your servant for this." "Go in peace," Elisha said. So at this point, we can see a couple of things. Naaman didn't hear initially what he wanted to hear. What did Naaman expect from Elisha?
Stand there and be serious.
He expected that when he showed up to Elijah's place, number one, Naaman was pretty important, at least in his own country. So he thought really good custom would be, once you visit somebody's home, the head of the house, in this case maybe Elijah the prophet himself, would come out and greet Naaman. So Naaman was expecting to, at least, if he's traveled all the way through Israel and down to Samaria to see this prophet, gone all this way with all these people, with all this money, all these mules, all these pairs of clothing, and a letter from the king of Aram himself, you would think at least you get to see the prophet that you're trying to go see. But he doesn't. Elisha sends out a messenger to do his job for him. And Naaman feels kind of a little bit insulted at this point. And also, the cure for his leprosy isn't a big religious ritual where he's going to go ahead and have his hands laid on him, or the Lord, like the power of the Lord to be called down right in front of him in a big show of force and divine power. It's no, go and wash yourself seven times, a ritual cleansing of yourself in the Jordan River. And at this point, Naaman feels angry. He feels insulted. He feels like this isn't what I wanted to hear. He's told to do something he doesn't want to do. But what's really interesting is the servants kind of outsmart him at this point, because they're like, well, think about it. What if he told you to do something really difficult? Wouldn't you go do it? Like, what if you had to go journey far away to go do something really convoluted, and like, you go on this quest to get healed? Like, wouldn't you go do it? So, going down to the river and washing yourself a couple of times, that's not too bad, right? Let's give it a shot. And then they convince Naaman to give it a try. And of course, the Lord heals Naaman, right? That's really surprising, isn't it? That Elisha is told by God to tell Naaman to be healed in a way that's really simple, in a way that Naaman doesn't expect. It really tests Naaman's faith. Another thing that's really interesting, though, is his response after he's healed. His response is that he knows that the Lord is the one true God. Now, you can see a little bit of superstition because he asked to take some dirt from Israel back to his homeland, because a lot of times they'll try to take stones or dirt or some type of physical reminder of where they've been to worship. So we don't know what Naaman does with the soil exactly, but it's probably he took it back to his own house as a reminder of what happened to him in Israel. And he asked for forgiveness for one thing, that when he has to go to the